Hello everybody, my name is Kyle39. Welcome back to another video. Today in this one we'll be doing another tier list video, and in this one we're going to be doing it on the meta decks post September 2023 ban list. So the last time I made a tier list for the meta decks, the very next day the ban list dropped. So I didn't want to immediately make another video on it, so I waited for YCS Dortmund to happen so we get a little bit of results in this format before making another one. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. We're going to go ahead and start off with tier 1 decks. I don't think there's really any tier 0 decks, so we're not going to even bother with that. So tier 1, obviously the first one that's going to come to mind, if I can find it, is Unchained. Unchained is still one of the best decks going into this format. It did not get hit in the last list, so again, it was one of the best decks in the last format. Shouldn't really change going into this format. The only thing I will say about Unchained going into this format is it might be a little bit more targeted going into this format, just because if people are expecting to play Unchained when they go to a big event, they're most likely going to be preparing. So there's cards like Phantasma and Marionette Might and shit like that that just completely randomly turn off Unchained for some reason. So that could be a scare for Unchained, and people just might be figuring out how to play against the deck as well. So it might fall off just a little bit, but I think the deck is still good enough, especially when going second, where it's still going to be a threat. It's still going to be one of the best decks going into this format. So do be watching out for this deck. Next thing up on tier 1. My boy is back. Tearlament. Tearlament was the most represented deck going into the top 64 of YCS Dortmund, and oh my god, there's no way this deck is back to tier 1. I don't want to believe it, but god, it's so good. It's one of my favorite decks. I'm going to put it there. It's probably more of a 1.5 deck, but I'm going to put it in tier 1. I think Tearlament is one of the better decks in this format. It seems like a Rise Heart was the only thing keeping it back. Rise Heart is now banned, so you don't have to worry about that, and Tearlament is just so good. Glad to see this deck is still performing. They're probably going to have to ban the Millers in the next list. Can't wait for that to happen, but so happy to see this deck coming back. Again, one of my favorite decks. Probably a 1.5, but in my opinion, I think it's probably up there in tier 1. Does a lot, especially if you're not playing the King of the Swamp version that a couple people are trying. I mean, it's a pretty much combo wombo fest, but it sets up an insane board at that. Again, I like this, but I like the safer version as well with the King of the Swamp. So you have actually multiple ways to play this deck now. So that is tier 1. I mean, I don't really think there's any other decks that deserve to be in tier 1. Tier 1.5. This is where I'm going to probably put a lot of decks. Based off YCS Dortmund, hell, we might have a fucking diverse meta. So first thing first, we're going to start off here is Purely. This was weird because Purely, it looked like didn't really do that much at YCS Dortmund. When you look at like the top 64 chart, it's actually in other, which is surprising, but I still think like Purely is still a good deck that you still have to worry about. Noir is just an absolute beast. So yes, you still have to very much worry about it, but again, it's also a deck that does like die to a lot of shit, like a Kaiju very much hurts. There's Herald of the Abyss if you're playing like with Thrust and something, but you can play around the Herald of the Abyss. But a Kaiju really does end up hurting this deck at the end of the day. Even going first, if you get impermed on the Black Cat, that pretty much hurts. DD Crow might be in this format. I think it's going to be one of the more popular hand traps. DD Crow hits the Purely matchup pretty well, so you do have to worry about that as well. So I think Purely is still a very, very good deck when it's able to go off, but after that, it's not, I don't think it would be the best deck in the format going here. Next thing up I want to put here, let me see where I can find it, is the Branded Chimera stuff. I think this deck is pretty underrated. Really like this deck. The only reason why this deck is like not the best right now is, one, it's very normal summon reliant, so it doesn't really have any ways to extension plays, which really sucks, and you kind of want to play extension in this format. So I think it's not going to be the best deck. I still think it's a deck you have to worry about. It can do so much. It can, you know, Guardian Chimera Fusion, you know, you're still playing like Branded Fusion and stuff in here. The only problem with the deck is it's very normal summon reliant, so you kind of need that normal summon to go through, and you're playing a lot of normals. I'm sure you're playing something like the Branded Opening to get Allure out, but it plays a lot of normal summons for this deck, so just be a little worried. But still a deck you still have to worry about, so I'm going to put it in 1.5. Next thing up here is Dragon Link. Dragon Link is still very much playable. Even after the Chaos Space and Magnemite hit, still very much playable. The end board is still there. Seals Pass is still an FTK in most formats. Again, they have ways to reoccur the Magnemite with something like Regain, so that's not that much of a hurt. So it's just a little bit more inconsistent. Maybe you don't want to play 45 cards anymore. Maybe you want to cut down to 40 and maybe just cut less hand traps and stuff like that, just to make it a super consistent deck. But I still think this is a very, very good deck that you do have to look out for coming in to this next format. Let me look at the rest of the decks. Let's put Rescue in here as well for 1.5. I don't know how well that Rescue did in YCS Tournament. I still think it's an underrated deck, especially when Age of Overlord releases with the new Diabell Star engine and stuff like that. I think this is very good. Again, being able to set 4 spell traps directly from your deck is still going to be insane. Still something you have to worry about. And it has generic extra deck options as well. I think this is a very good deck that people are just not exploring just yet. But again, still think it's one of the better decks in this format. So I'm going to put it in 1.5. And then looking at the rest of the decks, I don't think there's really nothing else in 1.5. So maybe it's actually going to be a lot more in Tier 2. So let's go down to Tier 2, shall we? First things first, we're going to start up with is the Labyrinth. Damn, Labyrinth is just in a very, very weird position right now. That's the really unfortunate part about it is it's just weird. Just in a weird spot. Because none of its deck got hit, but the deck is actually doing a lot worse now. Probably because like something like Unchained isn't really that great of a matchup when it comes to Labyrinth. Labyrinth can't really do anything. Unchained can pretty much play through everything. Power traps of Labyrinth being the Dimensional Barrier and Eradicator does not hurt Unchained in any way. So it's just kind of in a weird spot right now where it's still decent, but it's just not as good as it used to be. So I think it's going to be in Tier 2. Next thing up, where is he? There he is, Rika Sun Avalon. It just YCS Dortmund. This probably actually, I'm going to put it in 1.5 actually. We're going to put Sun Avalon in 1.5. It just won YCS Dortmund, so there is that. But here's the thing, when it comes to Europe, in Europe, it looks like Sun Avalon is just the most powerful deck in the format. But when it comes to North America, this doesn't do much. This doesn't really do that much. But, I mean, it's a very good combo deck. Being able to end on a couple interruptions, being able to tribute your opponent's monsters is always going to be insane. The only problem with Rika, I believe, is just going second. It's kind of its problem. It can't really play through a lot. So I feel like that is the massive problem with, you know what, we're going to put it back down to Tier 2. I think it's like the top of Tier 2. That's just kind of the major problem with Rika right now is that it kind of struggles going second. And then there's like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that great going second. Going first, it could play through like hand traps galore and stuff like that, it seems like, unless like you just open a shit hand and just a more normal summon reliant. But if you're able to go full combo, the end board is pretty much unbeatable. But going second, I feel like it does struggle a lot. So that is that for that. Next thing up, I'm going to go here. How is this deck still here? How the fuck is this deck still here? Flunder it's decent. It's okay. Like, being able to run Shifter in a format where people are trying a lot of newer decks because the Rise Heart's gone is going to be nice because Shifter just fucking kills decks for no reason. But, man, just that M-Pen as well is somewhat of a floodgate. It's a floodgate that can be played around, but it is a floodgate nonetheless. Is good as well, and being able to normal summon during your opponent's turn to get interruptions and stuff like that are good as well. But I feel like this is a deck that just kind of relies on its floodgate. Something like the Featherstorm comes to mind as well, where it completely just locks your opponent. I feel like that's the reason why Flunder is doing so good right now, because they have 3 Featherstorm, they have 3 dimensional shifters, so it's just like, well, yeah, you kind of just win with the floodgates. If you go off like basically the Flunder core, you can do a lot, but I feel like it still pretty much can be played through. But if you do end up drawing your floodgates, Flunder is still like the best deck when it comes to drawing its floodgates and stuff like that. Very inconsistent as well, which is like weird when it can run Duality Prosperity in the same deck. It just needs to get to its small guys, and that's kind of the problem, is it sometimes does brick when it comes to Flunder. So we're going to put it in Tier 2 for now. Next thing up here is going to be I guess we're going to put Manadium. Manadium is like all right. Again, when it's able to go full combo, they're turn skipping you, which is cool. I mean, it's not cool, but like that's a win con. But it just dies to Droll, and I just don't like that. I really don't like dying to Droll. It also pretty much relies on its field spell as well, the Manadium field spell. If you don't draw that, it pretty much is in a bad spot. But it's a very good combo deck if it's able to play. Again, it can set up on so much shit, but I just feel like it dies a lot to Droll, and that's kind of the problem. People are going to be side decking Droll. You just have to expect that. And it has troubles going second as well. So again, it's a good combo deck. I don't think it's one of the better decks in the format, though. Anything else I'm seeing here for tier 2? Why not? We'll throw Sprite in here. If we're talking like, I mean, I guess Runic is in this here as well. I'm going to count it as Runic Sprite, but Sprite always is a decent option no matter what, especially like the Runic version of the deck, or even the pure version. The pure version is pretty good as well. We're going to put Runic in tier, we'll put it in tier 2 as well. We'll kind of just put them together. Again, very, very good, but it just seems weird. I feel like there are just better decks than Sprite does. I mean, this can like Ibly lock plus set up on a couple stuff, but people know how to play against this deck. They know exactly where to hand trap against this deck. So it's like kind of struggles to just people knowing exactly what you're trying to do. Kind of can't diversify this line. I mean, that's not always a bad thing, but it's just been here long enough where it's just like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel that great anymore. It feels like there's just better decks in the format, especially if you have tier up here as well. I don't know. I feel like it does kind of rely on the Ibly lock as well. It doesn't have like any of its Ibly lock stuff. Like, it is a beatable end board. So I'm going to put it in tier 2. Anything else I want to put in tier 2? Fuck no, I do not. Yeah, we'll go to Rogue now. We will start off with Vanquished. This just got second place in YCS Dormant. I do understand that. I understand I'm putting the 2 final decks, Sun Avalon and Vanquished Soul, pretty low. But that's because I don't think Vanquished is that good. To be straight up honest with you, I think this is a deck that heavily relies on its non-engine. I feel like this is a deck that if it draws too much of its engine, it just loses because it relies on the non-engine way too much. So things like there can only be one is very, very reliant. You need to draw multiple hand traps in this deck. Sure, if you draw a Raisin, sure, it's kind of insane, but I don't know. I feel like this is a deck that relies way too much on its non-engine. So if you don't draw your non-engine, it's just not going to be that great. So we're just going to put it in Rogue. I don't think the interruptions are enough for this deck. Sure, you get to burn 15 with Borger. Sure, you get to win in time. But I don't know. There's a better deck that does that, and that's Rika. But I don't know. I just don't think this deck is as great as people think it is. I know it just got second place, but I don't think it's that good. Next thing up is Marentes. Again, it's another good combo deck, but I just don't think it's there. It dies to a couple of hand traps as well. It dies to Droll, like an Imperm at the right time can pretty much hurt. Its end board is beatable. Like the unaffected guy is only unaffected while the spell trap's on the field. So if they just pop the spell trap, you're not in a good position. I just don't think this deck is as good. Another deck that might just want to go a shit ton of hand traps and want to see it because it is one card combo. But again, I just don't think it's that great. The Revolution, the Synchron deck. Again, I feel like this is okay. I think actually this is probably better than Manadium, but Manadium has more top, so that's why I put Manadium above it. But I don't know, it just kind of fell off. It's kind of doing the same thing Manadium's trying to do, but I don't know. It's all right. It's cool. It's all right. I don't know. It's not that great. What else? Sword Soul's okay. I mean, like, Sword Soul's always going to be an okay deck in any format just because, you know, it's a 1.5 card combo. The Tendies can do a lot going second. Again, don't think it's that great. Vathmech's okay, I guess. I don't know if it can still set up on pretty much what it usually does, but it's a lot harder with Circular being at 1. I don't know. It's Rogue at best. Besides that, I don't think there's anything else. Everything else I'm gonna put in not in this format. I'll give my reasons why in just 1 second here. Let me just make sure there's nothing else I want to put in Rogue. I guess like Bakonko topped. It got a top 64. That's cool. It's kind of with the Infernoble Knight stuff as well. So I guess I'll put these two together. So it kind of did top 64. I mean, it was cool, but I just don't think this deck does enough. Another deck that just dies to Droll as well because you're playing the Infernoble Knight stuff. It's cool. It's a cool combo deck. I don't know. I don't think it's that great, though. Now, for just not this format. Oh, wait. Why am I leaving Branded here? What the fuck? Sorry, I just completely skipped Branded. We'll put Branded in, I guess, tier 2. I think it's worse than the Guardian Chimera fusion of the deck. You're still trying to Ibly lock, or not Ibly lock, you're trying to gimmick Puppet Lock, but now it's dying to a lot more. People are playing Crows, they're playing Druid's Worm. Like, it's just going to die to more, especially if Droplet goes more into this format as well. Like, I don't know, I think this deck dies to too much. Also, an Ash to Branded fusion, you just lose the game, right? So, I don't know, I don't think Branded is that great, but when it's able to combo off, it's pretty good. Everything else, we're just going to put not in this format. Altergeist is okay. Dark World has the hand loop, which is cool, but pretty much dies to Droll and itself sometimes. Exo Sister is a cool thing that was doing well in the last format. I don't think it's that great. Punk is not that great. It's just missing a Synchro 8. If it had a good Synchro 8 like Ruler, maybe it's doing something, but it doesn't. Hero is whatever. Cash is completely dead. They needed a Rise Heart to do anything, and they don't have a Rise Heart anymore. So, like, really the only card that's going to be played is Fenrir, and that's because Fenrir by itself is a good card, and that's it. Salamangreat, it does not change anything. That Gazelle's going to 3. I don't think this deck is that great. Same thing with Sky Striker. It's just not that great of a control deck anymore. I think Labyrinth is just a better control deck. And Trap Trick is, again, just there's better stuff than this. So, yeah, that is my tier list. I kind of try to speed it up at the end there just because I'm like, the not format and rogue stuff, there's not really that much to talk about because they're not in a really great position. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.